Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at this remarkable conference. My name is Matt. I lead our artificial intelligence product strategy at AWS. I've been at the company about 15 years, and I've seen everything from the early advent of cloud computing all the way through to the rise of traditional machine learning, and over the last 18 to 24 months, the rise of generative AI. And today, I'm going to take just 18 minutes to talk to you and convert you to a remarkable opportunity to scale, succeed, and shake up generative AI. This always seems to get left to the end, but thank you so much for joining us here today. I know this conference is enormous, and there is so much to see and do. You have a million emails in your inboxes, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit about what we're doing at AWS and about this remarkable opportunity that we are right on the cusp of. So generative AI, what else is there to talk about? It's the single largest shift in how we're going to interact with data and information and technology and each other, probably since the advent of the very, very earliest internet and the very earliest web browsers. And organizations like Amazon that invested in the early web browsers and the early internet have had pretty remarkable growth over the past 30 years. But I think that that is nothing compared to the growth that we will see for organizations that are investing in generative AI today. Multiple Amazons of growth are going to unfold for many, many, many hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of companies over the next 30 years as we deliver on the opportunity associated to building more intelligent systems and completely reimagining the products and experiences that we give to our own customers. So technology, over time, the capability tends to follow a bit of an S-curve. It starts off relatively low. You get incremental improvement up to an inflection point at which you see exponential increases in capability. And then, over time, you get reduction in returns, and you get back to the state of play where you only have incremental improvements. And you can never tell where you're at on this S-curve of capability until you're looking backwards down the curve. And I think there are some folks out there that may be looking at generative AI today and thinking that we're at the very top right-hand corner of this curve, that what we've got today is pretty much only with incremental improvements what we're going to have to live with for the foreseeable future. I don't think that that's very likely. I actually suspect that more people think that we are in the very, very high gradient part of capability improvement for generative AI. There's new changes, the new approaches appearing all the time. But for my money, I actually think that we're all the way over on the left-hand side. That what we see today, albeit fast-moving, is the earliest possible stages of improvements in capability related to generative AI. And in the future, we are nowhere near this hockey stick inflection point in capability. That said, obviously today, we're experiencing an extraordinarily rapid pace of change. There is new techniques, approaches, models, solutions that are appearing virtually every single day from industry and academia, all of which are worthy of our attention. And I can virtually guarantee you that by the time we've finished our remaining time here together, there will be new models available that are worthy of attention that we should be looking at. It is an extraordinarily rapid pace of change. And how do we as leaders, building our startups, how do we decide what our strategy should be in the face of such extraordinarily rapid change? Where should we invest? In an organization where we are trying to take our limited resources and apply them with the highest leverage, where should we invest? How do you spot that inflection point on the curve if you can only look backwards? With limited resources, how do you time the investment such that it is just right? If you're too early, you've got kind of an opportunity cost because you're investing resources in technology which may not be mature yet, or which may be usurped by something new and shiny and the big new thing relatively quickly. If you're too late, you may miss out on the growth opportunity. You may miss out on following this curve, this inflection point, all the way to the summit, and that means that you have limited growth opportunity yourselves, and you may limit your opportunity to shape the curve yourselves. So where should we invest? For my money, I think we should all be looking for these potential snowballs. These are ideas, opportunities, technologies which, when they get going, will build momentum on their own. And in so doing, will change the trajectory of growth itself. they will only gain more momentum over time, just like a snowball rolling down the hill. Now, they might be tiny today, some may already be starting to roll, and not all of them will make it to the bottom of that hill with the momentum to be able to continue to going. But for those of us that want to be able to get up to speed, place our bets, how can we find the right investments to make and set our strategy such as we're investing in the right things that are going to deliver exponential growth using generative AI? Now, the bad news, I'm afraid to tell you, is that these inflection points, these hockey stick inflection points in growth and opportunity are very, very unusual. They're very rare, they're hard to predict. They're kind of black swan events, and they only usually happen a handful of times per generation. But the good news is that there are a few telltale signs if you know what to look for. And so what I'm going to try and do is make the case that we are right on the cusp of this inflection point for generative AI. What we have today is remarkable, but there are a few things that if we believe this to be true, would allow us to make investments in a technology which is going to drive this exponential growth going forwards. And one of the ways to do that is to look back at other times that this has happened, going all the way back to the very beginning of agriculture. So a lot of these cycles start very early with the discovery of a new technology, which has improved materially utility and performance. And one early example of this is taking a stick and using it as a tool to be able to plant seeds in the ground. This is a discovery of a new technology which was materially more efficient than just planting seeds by hand. The next thing to look for, the second element of growth, is that over time, these general tools, these new inventions and discoveries, deepen in terms of specialization for individual tasks. That means that an individual stick can turn into a hoe, it can turn into a rake, it can turn into specialized planting equipment for specialized seeds, which in turn grow the aggregate crop of the growth. So you can now plant multiple different seeds using multiple tools which are specialized for those different seeds. And finally, you have this feedback loop where over time, these different specialized tools become much more collaborative. Individuals learn to use different tools together in order to be able to create a system which is much, much stronger than the sum of its parts. This leads to farms that don't just grow a single crop, but grow multiple crops. And they take advantage of the efficiencies of scale to be able to grow all those crops much more efficiently than they could any individual crop. And then, of course, that over time leads to more innovation, more discovery, more intuition, which feeds back into this cycle for the next evolution of an idea or a discovery. And this has played out in technology a couple of times as well. You can think of a discovery in terms of a new technology which improved utility and performance in the sense of the early browsers and the early internet. And from there, we saw specialization in terms of SaaS applications. I'm sure many of you have built businesses in this room that rely on very general or increasingly niche SaaS applications to be able to drive specialization. And over time, those SaaS applications grew such as they could be combined and integrated using APIs. And this allowed the web to grow and become much more valuable than the sum of its parts by the integration and collaboration of these individual SaaS applications. The same thing happened with smartphones and the mobile revolution, where we saw this new device that was remarkably capable, but by definition, pretty general. Over time, more and more applications and skills got added to those devices, and they made the device itself much more valuable. And then those applications started to be able to be combined through assistants such as Siri and Alexa, such as they could solve much higher order problems. And that itself made the aggregate environment of the device, plus the apps and skills, plus the assistants, much more valuable than any individual task, any individual part. So let's take a look at how this applies to generative AI. It's my belief that we are right on the cusp of three key elements lining up which are going to drive similar scale, efficiency, and productivity going forwards using artificial intelligence. So the first, which many of you will be familiar with, is the discovery of a new technology with improved utility and performance in the form of generative AI models in all of their shapes and sizes. It's become apparent in the past 18, 24 months that there is no one model to rule them all. Different models from different providers have different sweet spots. Some have different use cases that they're really good at. Some are excellent at summarization, others are awesome at analysis, others are really good at reasoning or code interpretation, or they break down by different operational characteristics. Some are really fast, others are incredibly low cost, and some are really, really intelligent. And what we hear time and again from customers that are pushing the envelope in applying generative AI to their business and to their products is that in isolation, you want to be able to find and match the right use case to the right model. That allows you to lean into that model's advantage, drive down cost, drive up capability by finding the right model. And it's what drove our strategy at Amazon to make the broadest selection of models available to our customers. And so we have models that are available from AI21 Labs. We have models that we build ourselves at Amazon. We work with Anthropic, the Canadian group in Cohere, Meta, Mistral, Stability AI. All of these providers provide a family of models that allow you to be able to mix and match to find the right use case for the right model. And that allows you to drive material new capability. But this is only one element. And whilst these models are remarkable and fascinating and seductive and fun and useful in and of themselves, they're only one element of what I think is going to drive exponential growth going forwards. The next is the arrival of deeper specialization of these models with specialized autonomous agents. Now, many of you will be familiar with working with some of these models, using Claude through the web app, working with Amazon Bedrock, where you provide a prompt and you can ask the model for information. You can have it write a poem or a haiku or rap lyrics or generate an image. Those are really interesting use cases that get a lot of headlines. But in fact, these models are remarkable integration and reasoning engines. And one use case for them is not just asking a question and getting an answer, but to be able to set an objective and ask the model to deliver on that objective completely automatically. And this is what autonomous agents look like. Instead of just asking a question, you define an objective. And you ask the models to be able to plan a strategy for how to meet that objective. They can then go off and take that strategy, create a to-do list, and start working down it methodically to be able to execute against that strategy, going step by step to assess the progress that is making towards that objective, and reassessing and changing the strategy as it goes. Over time, you can let these things iterate, combining multiple models under the hood, and complete the objective. So these agents aren't just there to help with knowledge reuse. They are there to drive automation and solve real tasks and real problems on behalf of customers. The challenge is that the models that underpin these, when you take them off the shelf, they have a remarkably broad set of information, but they're not very deep. And when you get into any depth, which is where most businesses operate, it's kind of like Swiss cheese down there. There's areas of information density, and there are areas of information sparsity. And hallucination and errors occur inside those models as the model moves between areas of richness and paucity. And so as you move into these Swiss cheese gaps, that's where the models make mistakes. And so part of what you need to be able to deliver is specialization of those models in order to be able to plug those Swiss cheese gaps. And there's a couple different ways of doing that. Knowledge grounding, where you can take existing data and apply it to your models using techniques such as retrieval augmentation. Behavior fine-tuning, where you can align the models to behave in particular ways by giving it examples of the types of responses and types of plans that you want to be able to see. And increasingly, model optimization. So you can take the models, take out all the pieces of the models that you no longer need, or combine multiple models together, such as they become stronger than the sum of their parts. And many customers ask me, well, what do? Do I use RAG? Do I use fine-tuning? When do I optimize? The truth is that it's actually an and, not an or. You need to be able to apply all these techniques in an efficient way to be able to specialize the agents such as they can complete tasks in the sort of depth and complexity that are useful to most organizations. And we've been doing this internally at Amazon with an assistant that we have called Amazon Q. Q is two main things. It is an assistant for builders to help software developers write code more efficiently. And it is also a builder for assistants. It allows you to quickly take all of the information inside your organization and start to package it together inside a helpful assistant, which also includes autonomous agents. So we have a coding assistant. We also have developer agents, which can drive feature development and code transformation. So instead of having to generate the code for a feature, you just tell Q, this is the feature I want to build. And it will look at all of the different code available to it. It will build a strategy for how to implement the changes, run the tests, update the tests. You can review that strategy, and then Q will write the features, the code, and the documentation for you to be able to complete that feature. We also make it really easy to make code transformation, to move between different versions of Java in a completely autonomous way. And for knowledge workers, we have an agent that will create applications based on the data that you provide to Q. So you can very quickly and easily say, hey, Q, I'm a lawyer. I always compare a couple of documents. Build me an application where I can just upload 2 documents, find the similarities, the differences, and the missing policies. So that agent will run automatically and build an app quicker than you could find and reuse an app that already exists. So it's a remarkable opportunity for agents if you can drive the specialization to be able to make them useful. The third piece is really the kicker. This is the part that drives the combinator, the thing that makes all of these pieces combine in a way that they are stronger than the sum of their parts. And here we're looking at multi-agent systems. The ability to not just use a single agent for a single task, but to be able to combine different agents in a collaborative or even competitive way, such as they can solve much higher order problems on our behalf. Now, multi-agent systems are relatively early. They are maturing very, very quickly. It's an area we've got a lot of excitement and a lot of investment in at Amazon. But if they play out the way that it is looking like they will, this is the combinator moment, which will combine with the underlying models, the specialized agents, to be able to start to drive that hockey stick inflection point in terms of capability. And it is here, in addition to the agents, in addition to the specialization, that if I was a startup today, I would be investing in. There is so much opportunity related to building the agents and then combining them in interesting ways. One such way is a hierarchy. You have one agent which is responsible for the collaboration of multiple different agents. This is really useful if you have a task where the path to complete the task is pretty clear and pretty knowable. So for example, you may have a coordinator agent that is responsible for coordinating and passing off subtasks to agents which are specialists in databases or architecture or writing code in a particular language or cloud architecture, front-end design, whatever it might be, and then collecting all that back up and building the application environment at the end of the day. Another approach is peer-to-peer. This one's kind of crazy, but in this case, no single agent is responsible for the delivery of the final objective. The component agents collaborate and in some cases compete, sometimes by voting, sometimes by just shouting loud enough, that together they are compassionate and antagonistic with one another in order to be able to drive a solution where the answer is not obviously clear. So both of these architectures are proving incredibly exciting, harnessing existing investment in specialized agents. And you can go beyond that, of course, and start to piece these things together where you have hybrid architectures. You have a coordinator which coordinates multiple peer-to-peer networks. And we're starting to see startups invest in this space and being disproportionately successful. One of my favorites is Ninja of which I am a paying subscriber. This is a remarkable assistant which has a single interface to multiple agents. Here you can have a scheduler which works with a researcher, which works with a code developer, and it will combine all the different pieces together to be able to make the aggregate Ninja platform much more capable than any of the individual agents. And what's truly remarkable about Ninja is that they run exclusively on Amazon custom-designed silicon for generative AI. So Ninja keeps their costs low by not running on a single GPU. It's a remarkable capability. So that's my pitch. I believe that we are right on the cusp of an exponential combinatorial explosion in capability, driven in part by the models that we have available today, driven by the excitement that we see already with the early agents that are proving to be useful, and in the opportunity of multi-agent systems going forwards. And I think if you choose to invest in these areas today, you really are investing in what is most likely to be one of the single largest hockey stick inflection points in capability and computing in a generation. Now, you may be asking, that all sounds great, but how do I get there? I'm pleased to say that AWS is here to help. We want to enable the next wave of generative AI startups, and just last week we announced the AWS Generative AI Accelerator. Now, we make available about $1 billion in funding to customers, startups, every single year through AWS credits. We're upping the ante and doubling down on what is working around generative AI with an additional $230 million in AWS credits that are available to any startup that is innovating in this space. That gives you access to the foundation and frontier models that I've been describing. It also gives you access to the Bedrock agentic systems that we call Bedrock agents, and the ability to be able to build Amazon Q assistants for your own customers. And in addition to that, a group of around 80 startups will be selected as our second cohort for a 10-week accelerator program, the previous cohort of which has been remarkably successful, involving folks like Crikey and Leonardo.ai that have gone on to realize tens of millions of dollars in aggregate seed and Series A funding. And here we'll provide the guidance, support, architecture, and technical support necessary to build these agentic systems. And I cannot wait to see how you all get going.